Most people hear the word prodigy and picture a bright futura child at a piano bench playing Mozart from memory, or a teenager solving calculus problems that stumped their teachers. Genius is often romanticized, seen as a divine spark, a ticket to greatness. But in truth, many teenage prodigies carry more pressure than most adults. They're praised, pushed, and prodded to perform to meet expectations far beyond their years. And in that chase for perfection, emotional well-being is often left behind. Her parents demanded excellence, straight A's, first place in everything, obedience at all costs. For years, Jennifer lived a lie. She forged report cards, faked acceptance letters, and pretended to go to university while spending her days hiding in cafes. Raised in poverty, Colton's genius didn't come with textbooks or tutors. These teenagers weren't violent by nature. They weren't born with malice, but their intelligence became a double-edged sword. It helped them build complex facades. After her arrest, psychologists reviewed her mental state. She wasn't insane. She wasn't detached from reality. She simply had no healthy coping mechanisms. But they do remind us that genius is not immunity. Intelligence does not prevent pain, it often magnifies it. A brilliant child still needs kindness, still needs friendship, still needs room to make mistakes without being destroyed by them. All her life, she had been told what to do, how to behave, what to become. But we don't ask how that child feels when they're not performing. They were morass reflecting what happens when intellect is nurtured, but the heart is forgotten. When talent is celebrated, but pain is ignored. We don't check in when they're quiet. And by the time the pressure cracks, it's often too late. Maybe we should ask, are you okay? And when she couldn't live up to that image, she didn't fall apart, she rewrote the rules. Her crime wasn't just an act of violence. It was her final attempt to regain control over her life. But it came at a devastating cost. It allowed them to outthink parents, schools, and even law enforcement. But it also deepened their loneliness. And in that solitude, dangerous ideas began to feel logical. He taught himself how to fly planes by reading manuals he stole from the library. By 17, he was stealing small aircrafts, cars, and boats across state lines, sometimes flying solo without ever having a pilot's license. All barefoot, he left chalk outlines of his feet at crime scenes, taunting authorities as he disappeared into the wilderness. Do you believe high intelligence can push some toward crime? Or are these stories rare exceptions? Share your perspective in the comment. And if you're fascinated by the complex lives behind brilliant minds, check out our next video on the dark side of child stars. Hit that subscribe button for more real stories that challenge what we think we know. Media outlets turned him into a legend, some even calling him a modern-day Robin Hood. But beneath the myth was a lonely teenager, brilliant, emotionally wounded, and desperate for control in a life that had given him none. Colton wasn't driven by revenge or ideology. He was driven by the need to feel free, to rise above the neglect and chaos he had grown up with. Her life became a carefully managed illusion, but when the walls closed in, Jennifer didn't confess. Instead, she planned something chilling. She hired hitmen to stage a home invasion and kill her parents. Her mother was murdered. Her father barely survived. The most freedom from the unbearable pressure, the lies, the fear of being discovered. Jennifer's trial became a media sensation not just because of the crime, but because of how eerily composed she was. Her recollection of the night was flawless. Detectives quickly realized they weren't listening to a grieving daughter, they were watching a script unfold. But behind the glow of talent, there's a reality much darker than we like to admit. They were orchestrated, calculated. That's what makes these stories so unnerving. These weren't mindless acts. They were executed by minds that understood consequences and chose them anyway. They're isolated from peers, treated more like trophies than children. Some begin to lead double lives, publicly brilliant, privately burdened. And eventually, for a few, the weight of those expectations cracks the foundation. The same genius that set them apart starts to turn inward, warping their sense of reality, morality, and according to studies by the American Psychological Association, gifted adolescents are nearly twice as likely to find themselves in legal trouble compared to their peers. That is a statistic that shocks and one that raises a haunting question. What happens when the brightest minds begin to unravel? There's a common perception that genius protects a person from failure, that intellect is a shield from poor decisions. Many of these teens grow up in environments where being exceptional is expected, not celebrated. Social lives become not. Take the story of Nicholas Jacobson. At 16, he was already being called a cybersecurity threat. A self-taught hacker from Utah, Nicholas infiltrated secure systems belonging to T-Mobile and even Apple. He accessed customer records, leaked unreleased device data, and manipulated servers for fun. When authorities finally caught him, they were stunned not by the scale of his breach, but by how calm and composed he was. Nicholas didn't see what he had done as wrong. For him, it was a game of logic, a challenge to beat the system. His crime wasn't motivated by greed, but by a desire to prove that no one was smarter than him. In his mind, he was simply playing chess in a world of checkers. Then there's Jennifer Pan, the quiet, well-behaved daughter of Vietnamese immigrants in suburban Canada. In both Nicholas and Jennifer's cases, their crimes weren't the result of impulse. And then there's Colton Harris-Moore, better known as the Barefoot Bandit. What unites these three stories is not just intellect, but emotional isolation. Jennifer Pan's story, in particular, has become a case study in how genius can become unhinged. These stories don't suggest that all intelligent teens are at risk. Most gifted children go on to do remarkable things. Society often fails to recognize that. We see the grades, the awards, the code written at midnight, and we applaud. Nicholas, Jennifer, and Colton weren't monsters. So, the next time we meet a young prodigy, maybe we shouldn't just ask, "What can you do?" If this story stirred something in you, we'd love to hear your thoughts.